Welcome back. Thank you very much for staying with us. We start in the Eastern Cape now. Train services have been further derailed in that province. Metro Rail says it's had to suspend services due to contractual obligations with the service provider. Widespread vandalism and theft have also affected operations. Thousands of commuters have been stranded since August, and it's anyone's guess when services will resume. Our reporter Ronald Masinda is in East London to get a sense of the situation on the ground. Ronald, good afternoon. We understand that many commuters in the Eastern Cape have been struggling to cope with the suspension of those trains. Just talk to us about this.
Funda, good afternoon. Well, what we have here in the Eastern Cape is that many train stations are empty. In fact, we probably saw more security than passengers or people who are looking to get into trains. We are also being told here in the Eastern Cape is that many people are still in disbelief that trains are no longer operational. There have been instances not only here in East London but in Gqeberha where people have flocked to train stations and were later told that trains are no longer available. And this has been happening for several months now. In fact, services in East London and Gqeberha were suspended in August. We also visited East London train station. That is where many of the trains that are parked are just there doing nothing, and many people, of course, understandably frustrated given the tough economic times many have had to endure with the high cost of living. Many relied on trains as a reliable mode of transport and also an affordable mode of transport. Now they have to fork out at least double, if not triple, the amount of just to get to work, which is tough for the people from a province that has a high unemployment rate.
Certainly very tough. But I understand you also spoke to local businesses in the area. What did they have to say about the situation?
So, of course, many people also use trains or the facilities where trains operate as places of business. Vendors and people who have other businesses have clients from commuting on trains. And one business person that we spoke to is a shoemaker. He says that he's been operating there for several months and he's finding it tough to pay rent given that people are no longer going to the train station to assist him in order for his business to thrive. This is what he had to say earlier.
It's affected a lot of us because when the train is running, they bring their shoes, and they later, when they are from work, they come and fetch it. So right now, when the train is stopped, everything is also stopped. So that's why it affected our business.
No, it's honestly very difficult for businesses such as those ones. But what has Metro Rail had to say about all of this?
So we know that Metro Rail has been grappling to seal a deal with a service provider which expired at the end of August. This deal was to support Metro Rail in terms of obtaining diesel locomotive. But what this has resulted in is that over 650 staff in Metro Rail are living in anxious times because they don't know as to when trains or train services will resume. And of course, with a lot of companies going through retrenchment processes, this has added to the anxiety. So what Metro Rail has done is that several of their staff complement are going through training and refresher courses just to ensure that they are active during this time and that people are not turned away, given that a lot of the train services are now not operating. We also heard from the Metro Rail regional spokesperson who elaborated further.
As a region, we were affected by the vandalism that has been happening in the provinces. We know that PRASA has been hit by the scourge of infrastructure and rail network vandalism. And now we find ourselves not being able to operate our services and give service to our commuters. And we have 7 e-locomotives that we have in the region that were acquired solely for the use of our commuters. But now we find them packed because our network is not suitable now to operate electric locomotives.
How is this impacting on staff and the business here at the train stations?
The staff is very panicky. Obviously, we are coming to the region to work. Those who are working in the offices are continuing to work because work must happen. And the ones that are operational, we are having training that is happening, awareness training and refresher trainings. You must remember that train drivers, they must have a valid license. So now if they are not using their license, it's going to expire.
Ronald, did you get a sense in your interaction with Metro Rail that they are actually treating this matter with the urgency that it deserves, that it will be resolved speedily?
Well, it's not yet clear, Mfundo, if whether or not they are treating it with urgency, but throughout the conversation that I had earlier with Metro Rail is that they are a bit gutted that the situation has come to this, because not only were they grappling with securing the service provider, but now they have to deal with the extra burden of ensuring that much of the infrastructure that has been destroyed through vandalism and theft is now fixed, which could take months, if not years, because we haven't got a clear indication as to how soon or when this process will end. But what we do know is that in terms of the train stations that we travel to in Cambridge and several others, we saw quite a heavy presence of security, people who are now trying to protect as much infrastructure as possible. So that is possibly the first step to this long process, because it's not only affected here at Buffalo City Metro, but also in the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro, and which means there's a lot of work. But what we do know is that urgency is needed, because the biggest issue that we also addressed with the MEC for Transport yesterday in our conversation with him is that they also want to reduce vehicles on the road, given that now trains are no longer operational in many parts of the Eastern Cape. So there's certainly some sort of urgency that is needed, but we didn't get much of an indication as to how soon this process will begin.
All right, Ronald, we'll leave it there for now. Thank you very much for that update. That is reporter Ronald Masinda. To the free